Most people think paying off debt changes nothing. You make your final payment. You feel good for maybe a week. Then you go back to your regular life. Same job. Same routine. Same paycheck hitting your account on Friday, like always. But the person who paid off that debt? They're not the same person anymore. The month after your final payment can change your next 20 years. Not because the money suddenly gets bigger, but because something shifts. Something psychological. Something financial. Something that compounds in ways you can't see coming. And if you're still carrying debt right now, whether it's credit cards, student loans, a car payment, or all three, you need to understand what's actually waiting for you on the other side. Because the truth is darker and more hopeful than you think. Let me tell you about Diana. She's 34 years old, works in HR for a mid-sized company, makes about $67,000 a year. She's smart. She's responsible. She pays her bills on time. She doesn't gamble or blow money on stupid stuff. By most standards, she's doing fine. But Diana doesn't feel fine. Every month, her paycheck arrives and immediately gets scattered across obligations. Federal taxes take a chunk. State taxes take another piece. Rent is $2,200 because she lives in a decent neighborhood in a city where jobs actually exist. That's 1/3 of her gross income right there. Then come the debts. Credit card minimum payment, $180. She's got about $8,000 sitting on that card from various years. A car payment, $349. Student loans, $221. That's $750 a month just to the past. $750 to yesterday's decisions, yesterday's education, yesterday's transportation needs. Insurance, utilities, phone bill, groceries, gas, another $1,200 minimum. That's about $3,100 committed before Diana can even think about saving, investing, or breathing. She makes $4,230 per month after taxes. $3,100 of it is already gone. She has $1,300 left for everything else, for building a life, for emergencies, for hope. Diana doesn't feel poor. She has a job. She has a car. She has an apartment. She has a life. But she feels permanently delayed. Like she's running on a treadmill that's slightly too fast. Always catching up. Never getting ahead. Working hard but feeling stuck. And the worst part? She thinks this is just how life is. Now let me tell you about Daniel. He's 43 years old. Similar income. Similar city. Similar life on the surface. But 3 years ago something ended. He made his final debt payment. The credit card was paid off completely. The car was paid for. The student loans were gone. And on that day in March, standing in his kitchen looking at a zero balance, something clicked. Not just financially, psychologically. Because the month after Daniel's last payment, his monthly obligations completely changed. The $750 that used to go to debt? Gone. Not gone to his paycheck, actually gone. Vanished into his own future instead of into a bank's past. Suddenly, Daniel had options. This is where most people misunderstand debt payoff. They think the benefit is just the money. Like, oh cool, now I have $750 extra a month. I can buy nicer groceries or take a vacation or upgrade my apartment. But that's not what actually happens. What actually happens is something fiercer and more transformative. When Diana pays off that $750 in debt, those dollars don't just become her spending money. They become her future money. They become compound money. They become the kind of money that grows while she sleeps. Let me show you what I mean. $750 invested every single month into a simple, boring index fund. Average market returns over the last 50 years have been around 10% annually. Nothing crazy. Just normal market performance. $750 a month for 10 years. At the end of that decade, Diana isn't just 750 times 10,000 richer. She's about $120,000 richer. The market did half the work. That's compounding. That's what happens when you stop paying interest and start earning it. $750 a month for 20 years. $550,000. We're not talking about Diana making more money. We're not talking about her getting a promotion or a raise. or a side hustle. We're talking about the exact same paycheck, just redirected. Same Diana, same job, same income, different destination for the cash. This is why debt is so insidious. It doesn't just steal $750 a month from Diana's life. It steals those $750 multiplied by every market return that never happened. It steals the compounding. It steals the decades. Debt doesn't just cost you money now. It costs you money forever. But here's where the psychology becomes even more important than the math. When you're in Diana's position, when you're paying $750 a month just to stay in place, your brain changes. Your risk tolerance changes. Your options change. Your entire identity changes. Because you can't afford to take risks. If your job is stressful, you stay. You can't afford to look for something better because you need that paycheck on Friday. The mortgage is due. The car payment is due. The credit card minimum is due. If you hate your boss, you stay. You tolerate behavior that makes you sick because the alternative, being unemployed, is worse than the pain you're enduring. If you have an idea for a business or a career change or going back to school, you don't do it. Too risky. Too uncertain. You don't have the runway. You don't have the cushion. You're 3 months away from disaster if something breaks. This is the real cost of debt. It's not just the interest rates and the monthly payments. It's the choices it steals from you. It's the person you become when you're trapped. Daniel experienced something completely different. When his debts ended, his job changed. Not the actual job, the same company, same desk, same boss. But his relationship to it changed. He suddenly realized he didn't have to tolerate something he didn't like. If they cut his hours or treated him badly, he could actually leave. He had options. Real options. That changed how he showed up. That changed his confidence. That changed what he asked for. Within 18 months of becoming debt-free, Daniel had negotiated a raise, learned new skills, and positioned himself for a promotion. Not because he suddenly became smarter or more talented, but because he could finally afford to play the game from a position of strength instead of desperation. That's what freedom feels like. Now imagine Diana at 34 versus Diana at 39, considering 3 different paths. In path 1, she does nothing different. She keeps carrying her $750 in debt, keeps making minimum payments, keeps feeling stuck. At 39, she's still in the exact same position. $750 a month gone. No emergency fund worth mentioning. 1 crisis away from more debt. In path 2, she gets angry. She decides to aggressively pay off the debt. She cuts expenses. She picks up a side gig. She throws an extra $300 at her debts every month. In about 2 years, she's debt-free. All $750 is hers again. But here's the thing. By that point, she's burned out. She's tired. She's been in survival mode. At 36, she finally has the money. But she doesn't have the energy or the mindset to invest it. So she doesn't. She just starts spending a little more freely. Her life improves. She's less stressed. But she doesn't build wealth. She just stops building debt. In path 3, she combines both things. She aggressively pays off debt in those 2 years. But she also changes her mindset. The moment that last payment clears, she treats those $750 like it belongs to her future, not her present. She invests it before she can spend it. Automatically. Every month. Like it's just another bill. By 39, path 3 Diana has paid off the same debt as path 2 Diana. But she also has about $40,000 invested that's already growing. She's not just debt-free. She's building wealth. She's compounding. She's playing a different game entirely. At 44, the gap is even wider. At 49, it's massive. This is what people don't see when they're stuck in the debt cycle. They think debt-free means you're done struggling. But debt-free plus invested is when you actually start building something. But here's the real kicker that nobody talks about. The person who becomes debt-free doesn't just gain money. They gain permission. Permission to dream. Permission to take risks. Permission to leave situations that don't serve them. Permission to say no. Permission to say yes to things that actually excite them. Permission to breathe. Diana, stuck in her $750 minimum payment cycle, has made peace with certain limitations. She can't take a month off work. She can't go back to school. She can't start a business. She can't leave a bad situation. These aren't conscious choices anymore. They're just facts of her life. She's accepted them. Daniel, 3 years debt-free, doesn't live in that world anymore. He's not suddenly rich, but he's suddenly in control. And that control is worth something that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. So here's what I want you to understand about yourself right now. If you're carrying debt, if you're paying $700, $800, $1,000 every month just to stay in place, you're not poor because you don't make enough money. You're trapped because you're borrowing from your future to pay for your past. And the person you've become in that trap, that's not who you actually are. That's just who you have to be while you're in it. The month after your last payment, that person changes. Not because you suddenly make more, but because you suddenly can. You can breathe. You can think. You can take risks. You can dream. You can invest. You can build. You can actually play the wealth game instead of just trying to survive it. And if you invest that freed up money instead of spending it, if you let it compound instead of letting it disappear, the next 20 years of your life are completely different than they would have been. This is why debt payoff isn't just about the money. It's about the person you get to become after it ends. You're not far from that month. And when it comes, everything changes.